There is a creature alive in the ocean right now. It breathes air. It nurses its young. It dreams in whatever way a whale can dream. You may have seen photographs of it, a gray shape just below the surface, a blunt, squared forehead pushing water aside, a body that seems almost too large to be real. This is the sperm whale, the largest toothed predator alive on Earth today. A fully grown male stretches to 18 meters. That is longer than a city bus and nearly as wide. Its head alone occupies 1/3 of its total length. The sound it produces, a rhythmic series of clicks, is the loudest noise made by any living animal. You can feel it in your chest from underwater. You can feel it in your ribs. For millions of years, the sperm whale was the pinnacle, the deepest diver, the largest hunter, the animal that had no equal. And yet, there is a rule written into the logic of this planet. It is not a written rule. It is not a scientific law with a name and a number, but it holds. For every giant we know, there was a greater giant we have forgotten. In the waters of the ancient ocean, the same water, the same salt, the same tides, something moved that made the sperm whale look small. Not small. It had the same basic architecture, the same blunt forehead, the same diving body, the same warm blood, the same long breath. But its teeth were the size of your forearm. Its jaw opened wide enough to swallow a small car. Its length exceeded that of the modern sperm whale by several meters, and it hunted things that no living predator would dare approach. We do not have a complete skeleton. We have never seen one move. We cannot hear the sound it made when it clicked into the abyss. But we have its teeth. We have the dome of its skull. We have the silent blueprint of what it was. And from that blueprint, we can reconstruct a world. Not a fantasy world, not a monster story. A real place, a real animal, an animal that was hungry and tired and occasionally resting in sunless water with its eyes closed and its heartbeat slowed to almost nothing. An animal that was, in every way that matters, just trying to survive. This is the story of Livyatan Melvillei, the macroraptorial sperm whale of the Miocene. The animal the ocean kept secret for 12 million years. To understand it, we must leave the surface behind. But we are not ready to descend yet. First, we must stand here in the light and understand the world it came from, and the world it left behind. Welcome to Info Jungle. If you enjoy calm, thoughtful documentaries about the natural world, consider subscribing. These videos are created to help you relax while learning at a gentle pace. We need to establish something before we go any further. The Miocene was not the distant past in the way we sometimes imagine it. It was not the age of dinosaurs. It was not a world of fire and shallow seas and creatures that look nothing like today's animals. The Miocene epoch ran from approximately 23 million years ago to 5 million years ago. By the time Livyatan Melvillei appeared in the fossil record, we are looking at roughly 12 to 13 million years before the present. In geological terms, that is recent. The Himalayas were already rising. Grass was spreading across the continents. The first apes were moving through forests in Africa. And the ocean was recognizable. It had whales, it had sharks, it had dolphins, sea turtles, giant kelp beds swaying in currents. If you had dropped yourself into the Miocene Pacific from a helicopter, the first few minutes would have felt almost familiar. The water would have been warmer than today. The global temperature during the mid-Miocene climatic optimum was perhaps 4 degrees Celsius above the modern average. That warmth penetrated the water column. Nutrients churned up from the deep in great upwelling currents. The ocean was generous. Imagine something like the modern Pacific left to grow unchecked for 10 million years. Wider, warmer, and far less empty. The continental geography was different in ways that mattered. South America and North America had not yet joined. The gap between them allowed a powerful current to flow east to west, circulating warm water across the equatorial belt of the ocean. The Tethys Sea, the ancient body of water that once separated Eurasia from Africa, was closing. Its final closure was reshaping the flow of the world's water. These were not small differences. Every current is a river of food. Plankton blooms where nutrients rise. Small fish follow the plankton. Larger fish follow the small fish. And at the top of every chain, something follows them all. The Miocene Ocean was a system of extraordinary abundance. And abundance in any ecosystem has a consequence. Abundance creates competition. Competition creates pressure, and pressure creates predators. The fauna of this ocean reads like a list written by an imagination that has not learned restraint. Carcharocles Megalodon patrolled the upper and middle water column. By this point in the Miocene, Megalodon had been the dominant macropredator for several million years. Some estimates place its length at 15 to 18 meters. Its teeth, broad, flat, serrated, were built for cutting through flesh and bone simultaneously. But Megalodon was not alone at the top. There were baleen whales in these waters, not the enormous blue whale of today, but ancestral mysticetes, filter feeders, yes, but the size of a school bus or larger. They moved in groups through warm water, following the plankton. There were pinnipeds, ancient relatives of seals larger than their modern counterparts. There were giant sea turtles. There were early dolphins, smaller than today's, faster, darting through schools of fish. And above all of them, below most of them, moving through the middle of the water column in long, unhurried strokes, was something with a forehead like a battering ram and teeth like ivory blades. That is the world we are entering. Hold that picture, because it is about to become more specific and more strange. In 2008, a team of paleontologists was working in the Pisco Formation in Peru. The Pisco Formation is one of the richest fossil sites in the world for marine vertebrates. It is a desert now, dust and dry wind and flat, pale ground stretching to the horizon. But the Pisco Formation is a former seafloor. The rock you walk on was once soft sediment at the bottom of a warm, shallow sea. The bones embedded in it are the bones of animals that lived in that sea millions of years ago. The desert is a memory. The team was excavating a site when something appeared in the stone that stopped them. Teeth. Not small teeth, not the kind of teeth you measure in centimeters. These teeth were up to 36 centimeters long. That is longer than a standard school ruler. Some were wider than a human palm. The enamel was still present. After 12 million years, the surface of those teeth was still intact. They were heavy. They had the weight of something that had purpose, not ornamental weight, functional weight. The weight of a tool built to grip and tear and hold. The team also found jaw fragments and a partial skull. The skull alone represented something extraordinary. The cranium of this animal was estimated at 3 meters in length. The forehead, the swollen, rounded structure that in modern sperm whales houses the spermaceti organ, was massive. Proportionally, it was larger than in any living cetacean. What this meant would take years to fully understand. The animal was formally described and named in 2010. Livyatan Melvillei. The genus name comes from Livyatan, the Hebrew spelling of Leviathan, the biblical sea creature, the chaos monster of the deep, the thing that swims beneath the known world. The species name honors Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick, the man who spent his life trying to put into words what it felt like to be in the presence of a sperm whale. It is a careful name, a name that acknowledges the long human tradition of reaching toward the ocean's greatest animals and finding them beyond description. The fossil tells us what we know, and the fossil is honest about what it cannot say. We have the skull architecture, we have the teeth, we have some jaw material. We do not have the flukes, we do not have the full spine, we do not have the soft tissue that wrapped around that enormous cranium. We do not have its voice. A sperm whale's voice is its most important organ, more important than its teeth, more important than its speed. The click trains it produces, dense, rhythmic, complex, are the instrument through which it reads the ocean. They are echolocation. They are communication. They are, in some ways, that scientists are still working to understand identity. We cannot hear what Livyatan sounded like. But from the skull, we can infer the instrument. And from the instrument, we can infer the music. A skull is a set of instructions. It tells you where muscles attached. It tells you the direction of force. It tells you what the animal was doing when it was alive, not in detail, but in outline. The skull of Livyatan Melvillei tells us several things at once. The first is the forehead. In modern sperm whales, the forehead houses two connected structures, the spermaceti organ and the melon. The spermaceti organ is a reservoir of waxy oil. When first encountered by whalers, they assumed it was the whale's reproductive fluid. The name reflects that misunderstanding. The reality is more interesting. The spermaceti oil has unusual acoustic properties. It transmits and focuses sound with extraordinary precision. When a sperm whale produces its click generated deep within the nasal passages, that sound passes through the spermaceti complex and is shaped into a focused beam. That beam travels outward through the water. It bounces off objects. The echo returns. The whale reads it. It is not sight. It is something richer than sight. A sperm whale at 800 meters of depth, in complete darkness, with no light source whatsoever, can locate a squid the size of your hand from 300 meters away. The skull of Livyatan tells us its spermaceti complex was proportionally larger than in any modern cetacean. That great domed forehead was not simply bone, it was purpose. It was the instrument through which this animal understood the world. The second thing the skull tells us is about force. The jaw muscles of Livyatan, inferred from the attachment points on the skull, were enormous. The bite force this animal could generate has been estimated by researchers at a level comparable to, or possibly exceeding, that of Megalodon. Both animals at the absolute ceiling of biological force generation. The teeth in the upper jaw and the lower jaw were functional. Both sets interlocked when the mouth closed. This is unusual. Modern sperm whales have only lower teeth. The upper jaw is largely toothless. This is because the sperm whale's primary prey, giant squid, does not require bilateral bite force to subdue. Livyatan's prey was different. It needed to hold something large, something that struggled, something strong enough that a single jaw was insufficient. The upper and lower teeth together formed a trap, a slow, patient, perfectly efficient trap. The third thing the skull tells us is about diving. The architecture of the cranium, the size of the acoustic organ, and the overall body plan all point to an animal built for deep, sustained dives. Deep enough to hunt in the mesopelagic zone, deep enough to leave the light behind, deep enough to move through water that was cold and pressurized and absolutely still. This is where the animal lived, not at the surface. The surface was only for breathing. The world was below. And now we are ready to follow it there. We have stood in the light long enough. We have held the fossil in our hands and read what it says. The animal we are following did not live here. It lived far below. The surface of the Miocene Ocean moves with rhythm. Waves rise and fall. Light breaks through the water in rays that shimmer and then fade. Everything above the waterline is warm and loud and full of motion. A body rises from below. The blunt forehead breaks the surface first, then the enormous back, a breath, a single explosive exhale that sends a column of vapor and salt water 3 meters into the air, then a long, slow inhale. The animal breathes. It breathes the way you breathe when you have been underwater too long, not panicked, not rushed, deep, deliberate, restorative. 3 or 4 breaths, each one slower than the last. And then the head tilts down. The flukes rise. They catch the light for a moment, a vast, dark shape against the pale sky. Then they slip below the surface and the ocean closes overhead and the light begins to change. We follow. At 10 meters, the surface becomes a ceiling of rippled silver light. It is still bright enough to read by. The water is blue, a rich, clear blue with no shadow in it. At 30 meters, the blue deepens. The silver ceiling above is still visible, but it is further away now. The light travels downward, but it is beginning to lose its yellow tones. Only the blue wavelengths carry this far. The red is already gone. The orange is already gone. The green is fading. At 60 meters, the blue is royal, almost purple at the edges of your vision. The surface above is a faint shimmer. The world below is not yet visible. You are suspended between 2 unknowns. At 200 meters, the light is gone. Not dim, not faint, gone. This is the mesopelagic zone, the twilight layer, where the water holds just enough illumination for animals with extremely sensitive eyes to function, but not enough for any eye built for the surface world. The temperature here has dropped by 20 degrees Celsius from the surface. The water is not cold the way a winter morning feels against your skin. It is cold the way the interior of a mountain is cold. Mineral, still, old. Livyatan Melvillei is ahead of us. Its heart rate, which was perhaps 50 beats per minute at the surface, has slowed. The mammalian dive reflex has engaged. You carry this reflex yourself. It is one of the oldest tools in the vertebrate body. Submerge your face in cold water. Hold it there. Within 30 seconds, your heart rate will drop by 10 to 20%. Blood will begin to shift away from your limbs toward your core and brain. Your body will begin to triage. This is not a choice. It is not something you decide to do. It happens automatically in the brainstem, in the oldest and most fundamental part of your nervous system. The reflex you experience as a mild curiosity in a bathroom sink is the same reflex that allows a sperm whale to spend 90 minutes at 2,000 meters. Livyatan inherited this too, but in its body, the reflex was refined across millions of generations to a degree that made the human version look like a rough draft. Its heart would slow to fewer than 10 beats per minute. Its peripheral blood vessels would clamp shut. Its brain would be supplied preferentially, protected above everything else. Its lungs, rather than fighting the increasing pressure, would collapse. Not catastrophically. The collapse was controlled. The ribs were built to hinge inward rather than resist. The thoracic cavity compressed as the water pressed in. Gas exchange stopped at a certain depth, and with no gas exchange, there was no nitrogen entering the blood. No narcosis, no bends, just depth. At 400 meters, something changes. The ocean becomes a different kind of place. We need to slow down here. Because what happens inside this animal as it descends is one of the most remarkable stories in vertebrate biology. And to understand what Livyatan was capable of, we need to understand the body that made it possible. Let us begin with the forehead. It is easy to look at a sperm whale's forehead and see bulk, see mass, see the blunt, battering ram shape of something built for force. But the forehead of a sperm whale is not a weapon, it is an instrument. Deep within the nasal passages, the sperm whale produces a click. The mechanism is precise. Air is forced past a pair of structures called the monkey lips, dense, muscular valves that snap shut rapidly. The resulting pulse of sound enters the spermaceti organ. Here it is shaped. The waxy oil of the spermaceti organ has an acoustic impedance very close to that of seawater. Sound travels through it differently than through biological tissue. It focuses the click into a directional beam. That beam exits through the front of the forehead. In Livyatan, the spermaceti complex occupied an even larger proportion of the head than in modern sperm whales. The inferred volume of the organ is staggering. Some researchers estimate it may have been the largest acoustic organ in the history of vertebrate life. What this produced almost certainly was a click of extraordinary power. Not necessarily the same frequency as the modern sperm whale. The skull geometry suggests a lower fundamental frequency, deeper, more resonant, less suited for the fine-resolution echolocation that allows a modern sperm whale to locate a single squid, more suited for something else, range. A lower frequency pulse travels further through water before it is absorbed. It can read large structures, the size of a whale, the shape of a canyon, the edge of a shelf where cold water rises and carries nutrients up. Livyatan did not need to see its prey in detail. It needed to hear the shape of the water. Now the muscles. The flesh of a diving mammal is not like ordinary flesh. If you were to look at a cross-section of a sperm whale's muscle under a microscope, you would see that it is almost black, not dark red, not the deep burgundy of well-oxygenated beef. Black. The color comes from myoglobin. Myoglobin is a protein that stores oxygen in muscle tissue. It is similar to hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in blood. But myoglobin holds its oxygen differently. It holds it tighter. It releases it more slowly under the conditions of deep diving than hemoglobin does. A deep diving whale's muscles are saturated with myoglobin. They are, in effect, biological oxygen tanks, distributed throughout the body, always charged, ready. During a long dive, the oxygen in the blood is depleted first. Then the oxygen stored in the muscle is accessed. And all the while, the heart beats slower and slower, stretching the remaining oxygen supply across more time. This is not gasping. This is the opposite of gasping. This is the body entering a state of controlled, deliberate conservation, a kind of focused stillness, a biological meditation. Researchers studying the metabolic state of sperm whales during long dives have described a condition of extraordinary physiological economy. The animal is not asleep. It is hunting. Its brain is active, processing the returning clicks, building a picture of the water ahead. But everything else, every organ, every system that is not essential is turned down. Not off, down. The way you might lower the heat in a room you are not using. The result is an animal that can spend over an hour in complete darkness, at temperatures just above freezing, under pressures that would rupture a human lung, moving through the water with the calm efficiency of a machine. And it does this routinely, every day, multiple times. Because this is simply where the food is. There is something almost restful in this biology. A giant, in the deepest water, moving at the pace of thought. We should address what all of this was for. The diving, the clicking, the extraordinary physiology, it was for eating. Let us be straightforward about that. The entire biological apparatus we have been describing exists because, at a certain depth, in a certain kind of water, there was something worth eating, and Livyatan was built to reach it. The question of what Livyatan ate has been debated since the fossil was described. The teeth are the primary evidence, and the teeth are unusual. As mentioned, modern sperm whales have only functional teeth in the lower jaw. The upper jaw is smooth. This works for squid. Livyatan had large, interlocking teeth in both jaws. This suggests prey that required bilateral grip, prey that could not simply be swallowed whole, prey that struggled and pushed back and needed to be held. The most likely primary prey was ancestral baleen whales. Not the enormous animals we see today. The great blue whale did not exist in the Miocene. The baleen whales of 12 million years ago were smaller, 12 to 15 meters perhaps, filter feeders, slow by the standards of the open ocean, moving in groups through productive upwelling zones. They were not defenseless. Their size alone was a deterrent against most predators. A group of them, alerted to danger, could form a defensive configuration. But against something that approached from directly below, in total stillness, using acoustic concealment and the vast shadow of depth, the first moment of awareness was often the last. Consider the mechanics of the hunt. Livyatan in the mesopelagic zone, several hundred meters below a group of baleen whales feeding near the surface. It clicks. The pulse travels upward. The return echo maps the shapes above, their size, their spacing, their movement. An isolated individual, perhaps a juvenile, perhaps an animal that has drifted slightly from the group. The approach begins, not fast, not yet. A long, slow, ascending arc, below the angle of easy detection. Using the temperature boundary between the cold, deep water and the warmer surface layer as an acoustic baffle, sound behaves differently across that boundary, and a patient predator can use it for concealment. The gap closes, slowly, methodically. Every predator understands waiting. Livyatan had perfected it. We should not leave this layer without acknowledging who else was here. The Miocene Ocean was not a stage built for Livyatan alone. Megalodon was present in the same waters, at the same time. In the Pisco Formation where Livyatan was found, Megalodon teeth are abundant. These two animals were contemporaries. They breathed the same water. They hunted in overlapping ranges. It is tempting to imagine them as enemies, two titans circling each other in an ancient clash. But that framing is probably wrong. Megalodon was a fish. Livyatan was a mammal. They breathed differently. They regulated their temperature differently. They processed the world differently. Megalodon hunted primarily at the surface and in the upper water column. Its teeth were built for cutting. Livyatan hunted at depth, using sound. Their hunting zones overlapped at the margins. Competition was real. Confrontation was probably occasional, but neither animal likely sought the other out. There are healed bite marks on fossil whale bones from the Miocene. Some of these marks are consistent with Megalodon dentition. Some are consistent with something else. The two giants of the Miocene Ocean most likely existed in a state of mutual awareness and mutual avoidance. There were also ancestral baleen whales in these waters, some as long as 20 meters, moving slowly, singing in frequencies that carried for hundreds of kilometers. Their sounds would have been audible to Livyatan from a great distance. The whale songs of the Miocene moved through water that had never been crossed by a ship engine. They passed through a medium uncontaminated by propeller noise and sonar, and the constant industrial hum of the modern ocean. The water was quieter then, in the same way that a forest is quieter before the highway arrives. And in that quieter water, the biological sounds were louder, more present, more meaningful. The deeper we go, the less the world resembles anything familiar, and the more it resembles something remembered. 500 meters. You will never go there. Not without equipment designed to prevent the ocean from crushing you. Not without air tanks and pressure suits and a vessel built from reinforced steel. Even with all of that, 500 meters is a hostile place, an environment that tolerates your presence only as long as your technology holds. For Livyatan Melvillei, 500 meters was somewhere near the middle of a dive. The pressure at 500 meters is approximately 51 atmospheres. That means the ocean is pressing on every square centimeter of surface with a force 51 times greater than the atmospheric pressure at sea level. For a human body, this force would be catastrophic. The air spaces in the lungs would collapse. The sinuses would implode. The eardrums, the air-filled cavities behind the eyes, all of these would fail. This does not happen to Livyatan. The lung collapse was controlled. The ribs were built to hinge inward. At a certain depth, the lungs are effectively empty. A limp, folded structure with no air pressure inside, and therefore no differential between inside and outside. The pressure cannot harm what it cannot compress. But the pressure is not only force, the pressure is also sound. Water at depth transmits sound differently than water at the surface. The chemistry is different, denser, colder, slightly saltier at some levels. These differences create what oceanographers call the SOFAR channel, the sound fixing and ranging channel, a horizontal layer in the ocean, typically between 600 and 1,000 meters depth, where the speed of sound reaches a minimum. Sound waves entering this channel bend. They refract. They do not simply radiate outward and fade. They travel along the channel, guided by the physics of the water for extraordinary distances. Blue whales communicate through this channel. Their calls have been tracked traveling more than 1,600 kilometers. In the Miocene Ocean, with no industrial noise to compete with, the SOFAR channel was a highway. The clicks of Livyatan entered this channel, and the echoes that returned carried information from distances that seem impossible, not the fine-grained information of close-range echolocation, something broader, a map of the water, the shape of the seafloor, the rise of a seamount kilometers away, the presence of a large, warm body moving at a certain speed in a certain direction. Livyatan navigated the Miocene Ocean not by sight. It rarely had sight at the depths it preferred, but by a continuous, three-dimensional acoustic model of the world. A model built from 10,000 clicks per minute, updated constantly, as precise as the animal needed it to be, and as broad as the ocean required. Silence at the surface is the absence of sound. Silence at 600 meters is the sound of the ocean thinking. We do not have behavioral data for Livyatan Melvillei. This must be stated plainly. We have teeth, we have skull fragments, we have the logic of comparative anatomy. We do not have a fossil record of their behavior. We cannot listen to their calls. What we have is inference. An inference from the closest living relatives is not speculation. It is the standard methodology of paleobiology. The closest living analog to Livyatan is the modern sperm whale. And what the modern sperm whale tells us about itself is extraordinary enough to serve as a beginning. Modern sperm whales are deeply social animals. They live in matrilineal clans. Female sperm whales and their offspring form stable groups of 10 to 20 individuals. These groups remain together for life. They share foraging areas. They share childcare. Other females in the group will care for a calf while its mother dives. They transmit knowledge: where to hunt, how to hunt, which underwater canyons funnel squid upward in which season. This knowledge is cultural. It is not genetic. It is learned and taught and passed down across generations. Different clans have different dialects. Their click patterns, called codas, vary between social groups the way accents vary between human regions. A sperm whale born into a particular clan will use that clan's coda for its entire life. Livyatan almost certainly had social structures. The Pisco Formation has yielded multiple individuals. The skull anatomy, the size of the acoustic complex, the investment in sound production and reception suggests an animal for whom communication was not secondary. It was primary. Now we come to the strangest behavior of all. Sleep. How did an animal this size sleep? A 50-ton animal cannot simply lie down. The ocean floor is, in most of its range, hundreds or thousands of meters below the animal's preferred zone. There is no shallow shelf to rest on. The answer for modern sperm whales was discovered only in the last 2 decades. They sleep vertically. A group of sperm whales, when resting, will orient themselves head down or head up in the water column, perfectly motionless, barely moving, breathing once every 6 to 7 minutes, just enough to maintain oxygenation. Researchers studying this behavior describe it as genuinely profound to observe. A pod of the largest toothed predators in the modern ocean, motionless, vertical, clustered together at the surface like a slow-moving forest. The clicks have stopped. The ocean around them is without sound. They are not alert. Studies suggest that during this period, sperm whales are in a state of sleep comparable to what we experience in deep sleep. And then one by one, they surface, breathe, and descend again. Livyatan Melvillei almost certainly slept this way. Now hold that image. An animal between 15 and 17 meters long, displacement of perhaps 60 tons of water, a forehead the size of a small vehicle. Motionless in sunless water, neutrally buoyant, suspended somewhere between 20 and 100 meters below the surface. Breathing once every 7 minutes, heartbeat at 8 beats per minute, brain activity slowed to its most fundamental register. The clicks have gone silent. The acoustic map of the world has been set aside. The body's enormous physiological machinery has been dialed down as low as it can go. That is not death, that is rest, the deepest rest that evolution has ever designed. And it is taking place in total darkness, in a medium that presses on every surface with the force of the deep sea, in a world 12 million years removed from any human presence. And the alien deep. Sleeping gently. We have constructed a portrait of mastery, and that portrait is largely accurate. Within its own ecological niche, the mesopelagic and upper bathypelagic zones, Livyatan Melvillei was almost certainly unchallenged. But almost certainly is not the same as completely. There were threats. The most obvious and the most discussed is Megalodon. There is fossil evidence, indirect but compelling, that Megalodon and large cetaceans interacted. Whale bones from the Miocene and Pliocene bear healed bite marks. Healed means the animal survived. These marks match the size and spacing of Megalodon teeth. The interaction was real. Megalodon was a specialist in ambush from below. Its jaw was wide, and its teeth were designed for a massive initial bite, cutting through flesh and bone to cause hemorrhaging. It relied on blood loss and shock to subdue prey larger than itself. Livyatan had a skull that was disproportionately armored. The bone of the rostrum was dense and robust. Some researchers have suggested this may have served as a battering weapon, the way modern sperm whales will occasionally use their heads to strike other animals. A direct confrontation between these two animals would have been something the ocean rarely witnessed, not because it was impossible, but because both animals had enough accumulated instinct to assess risk. The arithmetic of a fight between apex predators is always the same. The risk of injury is catastrophic. An injured predator cannot hunt. An injured predator starves. The calculation was avoid, circle at a distance, assess, withdraw. The greater threat to Livyatan was not Megalodon. It was the other raptorial sperm whales. This is something that popular accounts of Livyatan often omit. Livyatan was not the only macroraptorial sperm whale in the Miocene. Brigmophyseter shigensis lived in the same period. Smaller, perhaps 7 to 9 meters, but with functional teeth in both jaws and a robust skull. Acrophyseter robustus from the Pisco Formation itself was another. Zygophyseter varilei from Italy represents yet another branch. The Miocene Ocean contained multiple lines of macroraptorial sperm whales, all competing for large prey in overlapping zones. Competition between members of the same ecological guild is always more intense than competition between species occupying different niches. Livyatan's most immediate competitors may well have been its own distant cousins. Slower juveniles, aging males that had lost their edge, animals driven off feeding grounds, animals that had to range further and dive deeper and wait longer for the same caloric return. The Miocene Ocean was not a paradise for the apex. It was a marketplace, and the marketplace had competitors. The most formidable thing in the Miocene Ocean had no teeth. It had no speed. It was time. We shift now into something different. For the next several minutes, we are not observers from outside. We are inside the perspective, as close as language allows. This is one full cycle, one day. Before the first light. The water is cold. Not cold the way a cold morning feels against your skin. Cold the way the inside of stone feels when you press your hand against it in a cave. Mineral, still, old. At 20 meters below the surface, the body drifts. The forehead is slightly down. The body is tilted at a gentle angle. The flukes hang loose and heavy in the column of water. The eyes are closed. Not that the eyes would matter here. There is no light at 20 meters in the early hours before dawn. No light at all. But the eyes are closed. The breath comes once, a slow rise to the surface. The blowhole opens, a column of vapor releases. The blowhole closes, the body sinks again. 6 minutes pass. The heartbeat is 8 beats per minute. It has been this slow for 3 hours. This is drift sleep, the deep rest of the great cetacean. As the water above begins to carry the faintest change in pressure, not light, but the atmospheric change that precedes dawn, something stirs. The heartbeat quickens, not dramatically, from 8 to 14 beats per minute. The acoustic organs warm. A click quiet exploratory. The echo returns with a map. The world is here. Depths and shapes and movements. A school of fish somewhere above and to the left. Nothing of interest. A current boundary 300 meters below, and ahead and slightly above a large shape. Slow, warm, moving in a long, arcing path that suggests feeding behavior. The body straightens, the dive begins, not down, up, the prey is above. The first 50 meters of ascent are unhurried. Economy of movement. Every motion calculated to minimize energy expenditure and acoustic signature. At 100 meters, the clicks become faster, more precise. The acoustic picture sharpens. The shape ahead is a baleen whale, mid-sized, perhaps 12 meters, moving slowly, trailing at the edge of a group. The gap closes. At 20 meters, the large shape becomes a presence, not a sound anymore, a physical reality, the heat of its body detectable, the low-frequency sound of its own heartbeat audible. Everything that follows is the logic of millions of years. Afterward, the water is briefly turbulent, then still. The ocean accepts what has happened with its usual patience. By mid-morning, the body has descended again. Clicks fill the water column, patient, rhythmic, mapping the afternoon. There are other shapes, distant, a contact, a click in a pattern that is neither prey nor threat, another member of the group, exchanging information, location, recent history, the code between them in the pattern of milliseconds between pulses. The afternoon is long. A second dive, longer, deeper, 90 minutes at 500 meters, the heart at 9 beats per minute, the muscles full of stored oxygen, the clicks traveling outward in a cone of acoustic intelligence. By late afternoon, the caloric account is settled. Enough, not excess, enough. The group comes together in the upper water column. Clicks exchanged that are not hunting clicks, something slower, rhythmic in a different way, the codas of a social species. As the light fades above, the bodies begin to orient. Head down, head up, horizontal. The drift. The clicks slow, 1 per minute, 1 per 2 minutes, then nothing. The heartbeat settles, 8 beats per minute, 7. The ocean is full of its ordinary sounds. The bass of distant whales, the creak of tidal pressure, the slow, tectonic groan of the seafloor shifting beneath its own weight. The animal does not know what it is. It knows only the weight of the water, the warmth of its own body, the slow rhythm of its own breath. That is enough. That has always been enough. Time moves differently at this scale. 12 million years ago, Livyatan Melvillei swam in a warm Miocene sea. 10 million years ago, it was still there. 9 million years ago, something had begun to change. Not an event, not a catastrophe, nothing that could be witnessed in a single lifetime or in 1,000 lifetimes. A shift. The planet was cooling. The mid-Miocene climatic optimum had ended. The cooling was gradual, a fraction of a degree per 1,000 years. No animal alive could sense it. But the ocean felt it. The Antarctic ice sheet, which had been in a state of partial retreat during the warm period, began to expand. Slowly, steadily. As ice accumulated on the southern continent, the global sea level dropped. Shallow coastal seas that had been productive feeding grounds began to recede. The great upwelling currents that had made the Miocene Sea so generous began to shift their paths. Over millions of years, the prey base changed. The ancestral baleen whales that Livyatan had hunted began to evolve. Some lineages grew larger, much larger. A 15-meter baleen whale is large enough to hunt, with coordination, with patience, with the full weight of a 40-ton body. A 25-meter baleen whale is a different calculation entirely. The prey was changing, getting larger or moving away, heading toward colder waters where the raptorial sperm whales did not follow. Megalodon faced the same arithmetic. Both apex predators of the Miocene Ocean were calibrated for a specific kind of abundance, a specific water temperature, a specific prey distribution. As those parameters shifted, the return on the enormous energetic investment of their bodies began to diminish. The mathematics of a very large body are unforgiving. A 20-meter shark, or a 17-meter toothed whale, requires a great deal of food to sustain itself. When the food becomes sparse, the large body is the first to run short. The small predator adapts. It eats less. It switches prey. It is flexible in a way that specialization does not allow. The specialists, the giants, the pinnacles have nowhere to go. They are the apex. By definition, there is no higher rung to climb. Extinction is not a moment. It is the last echo of a sound that has been fading for 10,000 years. From the fossil record, Livyatan Melvillei disappears somewhere between 8 and 5 million years ago. The record is imperfect. Fossilization is not guaranteed. The absence of a fossil is not necessarily the absence of a living animal. But by 5 million years ago, the Miocene had ended. The Pliocene had begun. The ocean was colder. The prey was different. And there is no sign of Livyatan. There was a last one. There is always a last one. We do not know when it lived. We do not know if it was male or female, young or old. We do not know if it was one of many still, or the final individual of its kind. But it existed, somewhere in a cooling ocean, in a world that was no longer what it had been calibrated for. The last Livyatan Melvillei was alive. It did not know it was the last. That knowledge is a human burden. The awareness of endings is something our kind carries, not the whales. The last Livyatan simply lived. It dove in the mornings. It clicked into the abyss and read the returning shapes. It found prey less often than its ancestors had found it, perhaps, ranging further, diving longer. The search growing longer. There is a behavior observed in modern sperm whales when prey is scarce. They extend their dives. They range to new areas. They become quieter, less social. The codas between group members become less frequent. The group itself may fragment, animals separating to cover more ground, or simply, across generations, fewer animals, fewer calves successfully raised, fewer juveniles surviving their first years. The population thins, not with drama, with arithmetic. The last animal dove, and rose and breathed and dove again. And then at some point, on some ordinary day in a cooling Pliocene sea, it did not rise. Not dramatically, not at the end of a fight. It simply did not come back up. And the body began to fall, 50 meters, 100, the water becoming deeper as it descended, 300 meters, 500 meters, the zone where it had once hunted with such patience and precision. At the bottom, on the sediment, it came to rest. And something extraordinary began. A whale fall. When a whale dies in the open ocean, its body becomes an ecosystem. Not immediately, not all at once. In the first stage, sharks and hagfish descend. They strip the soft tissue over weeks or months. They are efficient. Nothing is wasted. In the second stage, polychaete worms and crustaceans colonize the bones. They consume the remaining organic material. They breed in it. They build small communities on the skeleton. The third stage is the strangest. Bacteria colonize the bones themselves. They feed on the lipids stored in the bone tissue. They produce hydrogen sulfide as a byproduct. And around these bacteria, a specialized chemosynthetic community assembles. Tube worms, mussels, clams, animals that live not on sunlight as almost all life on Earth does, but on the chemical energy of the ocean floor. A whale fall can support this community for decades. A large whale fall, and Livyatan was among the largest, may sustain a thriving deep-sea ecosystem for over a century. The last Livyatan, settling onto the seafloor of the Pliocene Ocean, did not simply die. It became a world. Even in ending, it fed a world. In the sediment, time runs slowly, incredibly slowly. After the whale fall community exhausted what the bones had to offer, the skeleton was left. Calcium phosphate, dense, heavy. The sediment around it shifted. Fine particles drifted down from the water column in a constant slow rain, each particle smaller than a grain of dust, each settling at a rate measured in centimeters per 1,000 years. The bones were covered, first a thin layer, then thicker. Decades became centuries. Centuries became millennia. The seafloor above the skeleton was slowly compressed. The sediment became rock. The bones, surrounded and permeated by mineral-rich water, began to change at a molecular level. Mineral ions replaced organic molecules. Slowly, atom by atom, the bone became stone. The process required a specific chemistry, a specific rate of burial, a specific absence of the biological activity that would break down bone before it could mineralize. Most animals that die leave nothing. Their bodies are consumed completely, by scavengers, by bacteria, by the ocean's chemistry. They return to the water without leaving a mark. The chance of any particular animal becoming a fossil is vanishingly small. One estimate suggests that fewer than 1 in a billion animals that ever lived has left any fossil trace at all. The teeth and skull of Livyatan survived. 12 million years under first the ocean, then the sediment, then the stone, then the desert. They were waiting in the rock of the Pisco Formation when the first paleontologists began to excavate. They were heavy. They had the weight of deep time in them. 12 million years. Hold that number for a moment, not as a number, as a feeling. 12 million years ago, the continent you are on right now was in a different position. The Himalayas were lower. There were no humans, no primates that would recognize themselves. The world was different in ways that go deeper than geography. The sounds were different. The smells were different. And in a warm sea on the edge of what is now South America, an animal dove in the early morning into sunless water and clicked, and listened, and hunted. And we know this because of 2 teeth and a piece of skull found in a desert by patient people with brushes and rulers, and the ability to sit very still in the sun. We rise now. Slowly. The way pressure releases in stages. The way a deep-water creature must ascend carefully, not all at once. Up through the layers. From the sediment, through the sulfophilic community, up through the enrichment opportunists, up through the zone where the scavengers worked, through the bathypelagic, through the mesopelagic where the twilight lives, up through the blue-green zone where the light begins to return, into the blue, into the shallows, into the surface. There is an ocean here. It looks familiar. And yet there is something in the surface water, a large shape moving slowly. A sperm whale, a male, 17 meters, a blunt, squared forehead filling a third of its length. It breathes that familiar explosive exhale, 3-4 breaths, and then it tilts. The flukes rise, and it goes down into the zone that Livyatan once owned. The design survived. The sperm whale is not Livyatan. It evolved separately. It took a different path from the ancestral sperm whale lineages. But the body plan, the domed forehead, the acoustic organ, the deep-diving physiology, the drift sleep, the ocean kept what worked. 12 million years of iteration and selection, and extinction and replacement. And the ocean arrived back at something that looks almost the same. Because the ocean has not changed, cold at depth, without light in the mesopelagic, full of prey that requires patience and darkness and sound to locate. The problem has not changed, and so the solution has not changed. The giant is gone, but the architecture of the giant persists in the living world. Every time a sperm whale orients vertically at the surface in the early morning hours, barely moving, breathing once every 6 minutes, it is performing a behavior that Livyatan also performed. In the same water, in the same depths, with the same extraordinary body. The ocean does not remember this, but the body does. The ocean floor holds the memory of every giant that ever fell, but Livyatan was not the only titan to vanish. In the next entry, we will explore the world of Megalodon, a predator whose teeth still wash ashore today. A world separated from the surface for far longer.